Our 2-day tour along Iceland's south coast extended further than the 1-day tour did, for obvious reasons. Link shown on screen for that one now. But the second day's locations were better. So rather than heading back to Reykjavik after the Black Beach, we instead carried on towards this big white area here. This here is Vatnoj... For goodness sake, no one knows how to say it. This here is Vatnoj, by far the biggest ice cap in Iceland. It covers 8% of the country, and I'll talk more about it later. But first, we must get there. We headed around to the other side of the large cliff here, to the town of Vik, where lots of tours stop off for toilet breaks and a meal of some kind. From here is a different view out towards the sea, and of these famous rock stacks, which you can see from the Black Beach. There's then a very long, very flat trip across various lava fields. One of the great things about going on a tour instead of having to drive it yourself is, well, firstly, you don't have to drive this long, boring stretch, and secondly, you're told lots of interesting stuff about how these landscapes are formed, and whether this particular bit of land has been destroyed by ash, by lava, or by floods of some kind. I know that being able to see tens of miles into the distance is quite normal in a lot of places in the world, but not for me in England. I'm used to seeing lots of hills and cliffs, which prevent the same insane view distances that you get in a place like Iceland, where you seem to be travelling towards the same distant cliff for literally hours, only to eventually pass it, only to see another distant cliff, which you'll then be travelling towards for hours. Luckily, there were some things to break up the monotony. We stopped in the middle of a lava field. This is only thousands of years old, and is very rough and sharp to the touch. Delicate moss grows on these rocks and can take decades for it to grow back, so they limit where you can walk to prevent damaging the environment. Luckily, contained within this walkable area is this nice little assault course just here. I bet you that Hideo Kojima got the idea for his walking simulator, Death Stranding, from trying to walk over a spot just like this. While we're here on the topic of media, the movie Interstellar had at least some of its alien planets filmed here in Iceland. That movie had a watery one, a snowy one, and a desert one. And the watery one was filmed here. Well, not exactly here, but apparently not far from this spot is a large flat area that occasionally gets a shallow water coverage. So it's not like you even see Iceland in the movie, you just see the water on top of it. And if you ask me, this is a silly place to film such a scene since the water here will be freezing. But yeah, Waterworld not far from here. Tidal waves not included. The next stop is way out here, past a point that has been absolutely destroyed by floods. This is a very ominous part of the journey because in the distance you can see the big icy region. And while it looks, and is, tens of kilometres away, that still isn't far enough away to be safe should it erupt, which it does do every 700 years or so, the last time being about 700 years ago. In the middle of this flat area is the remnants of a bridge that used to be here before it got wrecked by a floating bit of ice. It is an excellent spot to take panoramic shots from, and we occasionally caught glimpses of Iceland's highest peaks from through the clouds. It is an inspiring place, revealing some of the glaciers leading off from this colossal ice cap. And this is where the snowy planet from Interstellar was filmed. This isn't even one of the bigger glaciers, yet it's still big enough for that. They also filmed some of Game of Thrones here, but who cares about that anymore? While I'm on the topic of Interstellar, I couldn't for the life of me figure out where the third planet, Dr. Edmunds, was filmed. That's the deserty one at the end. And apparently the internet doesn't know where it was filmed either. Some people think it's filmed in California, others in southern Iceland. But our guide identified one of the pictures from this fandom page as being from somewhere around here in Iceland's highlands. Whether or not it was filmed here, I don't know, but he then went on to tell me that NASA chose to test stuff in this region of Iceland before the moon landings. So there you go. 50 years ago, NASA astronauts chose this place on Earth because it's the most like another planet. And in 50 years' time, a NASA astronaut will end up colonising this place because it's the alien planet most like Earth. And then it was off to our hotel for the night, situated right at the base of the ice cap. And this was one of our favourite bits of the holiday, because we had a few hours just to do whatever we liked here, so we chose to climb the volcano. Our guide told us that there was a waterfall of some sort up the valley, and we made that our goal to reach. It's not like we even went that far, but it was still enough to feel like an adventure, and we were well and truly away from it all. It's a very different experience to the countryside of England. Firstly, there were no paths, second, no people, and third, there's no such thing as trespassing here. We took our time following the edges of fences and skirting around gardens and such, but were later told that we didn't have to do that. Apparently, trespassing isn't really a concept in Iceland. If you want to walk through somebody's land, then you can do that. If you want to camp in somebody's garden, you can do that too. If they ask you to leave, then you do, out of respect, but generally, people here don't care. And coming from England, that is an alien concept to us. I'll spoil the walk for you. We didn't find a waterfall. We reached a part of the river that we couldn't cross and turned back at this point. But it was a very memorable part of the holiday for us, with the cliffs extending up all around us. I guess if you drove around Iceland yourself that you'd have a lot more moments like this than we did. Our group had dinner together, and then we were told that this was a good place to see the northern lights from, with there being very little light pollution here. I kind of wish I hadn't been told, because I then spent the whole night impatiently glancing out of the window and taking light exposures on my phone in the hope of seeing something. I did not, even when that website informed me that there was some activity going on. Northern lights are such a tease. Our group had breakfast together the following day, and then we headed out. This day comprised of just this spot here, which seems to have everything you could want. But first, let me tell you about glaciers. What happens is, snow lands on the top of a mountain, and because it's so cold up there, it doesn't melt. It instead gets thicker and thicker, compressing the layers of snow below it until it eventually becomes ice. As the air bubbles get squeezed out, it eventually takes on that beautiful bluish look that you think is photoshopped in if you ever see pictures of icebergs. But the ice can't remain at the top of the mountain. Under its immense weight, it begins to flow downhill. We aren't talking about meters of ice here. It can get up to 1 kilometre thick. 1,000 meters of ice. That's half the height of this mountain itself. In fact, I don't even know where the mountain ends and where the ice begins. The average thickness of ice in this area is apparently 400 meters, which is roughly the height of the Empire State Building. That's an immense amount of ice and an unfathomable weight, all being pushed towards the ground by gravity, all slowly flowing down the sides of this mountain and carving out huge valleys as it goes. I assumed when they say glaciers formed valleys that they were referring to a process that took millions of years, but it doesn't take that long. And these hills you're seeing here, this is as far as the glacier travelled, pushing the ground out as it ploughed slowly onwards and downwards. Sort of similar to how you accumulate a mound of sand by dragging your foot through the sand on a beach. This also happens to be where the rocks, which previously landed on the glaciers, end up being dropped off, as you can see from this clip here. That's how all these boulders got here. The reason there's no longer a glacier behind these mounds is because it's retreated back to closer to the foot of the mountain. Now, I know a lot of you don't believe in climate change or global warming or science, but it needs to be talked about, because it's relevant to everything we saw on the second day. There are natural changes to the Earth's temperature. 9,000 years ago, there were no glaciers here. Things started cooling down again 4,500 years ago, but it's only really been in the last 1,000 years or so that the glaciers have started getting really big and awesome, and they reached their maximum size at the end of the mini ice age in the year 1900. Since then, in the last 100 or so years, some people have argued that the world has warmed up. I mean, I don't see any proof of it here. It looks fine to me. The glaciers have been on the retreat since then, leaving mounds of dirt and large holes in their wake. One such hole became this lake. If you look at this and feel the urge to drive a car straight into it, don't. Plus, James Bond already did that back in Die Another Day. This was shot in winter when it was all frozen and stuff. So what we have here is the glacial melt that occurs at the end of every winter, when chunks of the glacier break off and float down towards the sea. They all get stuck in a traffic jam just here until they're small enough to float underneath this bridge and out to the sea, where they then wash up on the diamond beaches. Yes, you might have seen these beautiful pictures of the diamond beaches, where these chunks of ice shine and sparkle and really stress your screen's ability to display blue colours to the brink. Sadly, we visited it on a cloudy day, and I forgot to ramp the saturation up. So this is what they looked like. Still very nice, but once we had snapped the pictures, got our shoes wet and I held a chunk of ice like a gun, there wasn't really much else to do here. But that's fine, because this still looks spectacular, and it seems we were lucky to see it like this. For less than 2 weeks later, Miko Man sent me these images of the place on Twitter, and the ice had all but gone. Until next year, I guess. So we caught it all at the tail end of the winter period, and in case you were wondering what all that dirty looking stuff in the ice is, that's volcanic ash from past eruptions. More on that later. You can see how far the glacier has retreated by how big this lake now is. Here it was in 2012, and here it was in 1985. It's from here, just by the side of the lake, that we got a ride in one of these beauties, which took us to the ice caves at the very foot of the glacier. These vehicles are great. The pipes leading out from the wheels can inflate and deflate them, depending on the sort of terrain that they're on. 20 psi for the roads, 8 for off-road, and then even lower still when on snow and ice. Though apparently the vehicle that we were in didn't even have big enough wheels for that. But they were still very big. We parked up here, which used to be right next to the glacier, and then we had to walk to it, now situated far off in the distance. And these cliffs here, that's how thick the ice used to be at this spot. Like I said, it's really hard to get a sense of the scale of this stuff. This walk was glorious. On one side, we had jagged, misty mountain peaks stretching up into the clouds, and the rest was all flat as far as the eye could see. It felt like we were walking on the edge of the world, and up ahead loomed the glacier. Some people do expeditions along the top of it. You can see a group just here peering down into a big scary hole of some kind. But we were visiting the ice caves, where the water running through the glacier carves out a passage through them. We wore crampons to help us grip inside it, but most of the ground there comprised of rock and gravel. These ice caves were grit, and embedded within this ice, you can see layer upon layer of volcanic ash. Each of these layers was years apart, with years of snow sprinkled between, which is all gradually crushed down to just inches of clear, blue ice. You're only able to see in this place because the ice above it is so thin. As you go deeper into the cave, it gets darker and darker, as the ice above you grows thicker and thicker. We couldn't go too far before it grew too dark to go any further without head torches. But next year, it will be different. Because every year, what's here will melt, and new areas open up further inside, as more and more of the glacier is eroded out. Where it starts this year is approximately where the deepest part of the cave was last year, and had our holiday been a week later, we wouldn't even have been able to come, as most tours to this cave close for the summer when it's more likely to melt and to collapse. So there's something bittersweet about visiting a cave like this, knowing that it will never again be like this, and in a few decades' time, might not even exist at all. Of course, the ends of the glaciers are always melting away, as the rest of it behind it shuffles forwards. It's just that for the last 100 years or so, the amount it's shuffled forwards hasn't matched the increased speed at which it's been melting away at. Now this would have happened even without humans. These glaciers only grew so far in the first place because of a recent cold period in history, and now that that's over, they're retreating again. It's just that mankind has made this process faster. And after that, we drove back to the capital, which took about 5 hours of driving, plus additional time for stops. Back around to the other side of the mountain, back to where Interstellar was filmed, there's this large dark patch. I thought it was where a large patch of it had completely melted away, revealing the ground beneath. But that isn't what's happening. There is still ice here. Very thick ice, in fact. It's just that a landslide covered this patch a few years ago. If you look closely, you can see that the bit that's covered is higher up than where the ice is exposed around it. And that's because this layer of dirt is acting as an insulating blanket, protecting the ice beneath it from the heat of the summer. I'm actually hopeful that this could even help the glacier to reach further forwards than it has done in recent years. There is something very sad about knowing that this sort of thing won't be around forever. What if in 50 years' time, I suddenly wake up with a burning desire to see them? What if people begin to deny the very existence of ice and glaciers? I suppose that's why I like documenting things the way I do, in the form of these video series, and by publishing them online. Because you never know what's going to happen in the future. Though, in the case of glaciers like these, we have a pretty good idea. And that was it.